I'm John Strum, and this is RealTalk MS. It's March 11th, and we have a lot to talk about. This week is MS Awareness Week, and all week long, you can expect to hear bonus episodes of Real Talk MS featuring conversations with some of the top MS experts in the world, whom I had a chance to talk with just a couple of weeks ago at the 2025 ACTRIMS Forum. During MS Awareness Week, the National MS Society is amplifying the voices of people living with MS by asking everyone in the MS community to tell MS exactly what they think of it. And in today's episode, I want to introduce you to two difference makers in the MS movement who have each found their own way to talk back to MS. Case Jernigan makes art. He's an experimental animator, narrative game maker, and educator. And I met up with Case after seeing his short animated documentary, Noggin, which is about Case's experience dealing with his MS symptoms. If you'd like to watch Noggin, you can visit realtalkms.com and scroll down the homepage to today's show notes, where you'll see the video. But right now, you're going to meet Case Jernigan. We make art for so many different reasons. Art can help us cope with difficult situations. Art can communicate or share an experience. Art can help us better understand ourselves. Noggin is a short animated documentary about Case Jernigan's experience dealing with his MS symptoms. And I'm happy to have Case join me to talk about this engaging short film. Welcome to the podcast, Case, and congratulations on the positive reaction that I know Noggin has been getting on the film festival circuit.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate that. I'm happy to be here.
So when were you diagnosed with MS?
It's been almost 3 years now.
And what's been the most challenging aspect of living with MS for you?
I feel like that is changing a bit over time. I have a very active imagination, and I think initially my mind would just spool off into the distance and imagine a future for myself that had no relationship to the previous futures I'd imagined for myself. And I'm a very physical, very active person. I love sports. I love moving and walking and running and playing soccer and tennis. And I imagine those things taken away from me. I pride myself on being a person with a sharp memory, and I'm a very curious person. And I'd felt myself losing my edge when I was initially diagnosed. And, it just scared me so much that I wasn't going to be able to be who I always envisioned. Now, fortunately, I have relapsing, remitting, and a lot of my worst symptoms that happened during the relapse that got me diagnosed have gotten a good bit better. Vision and tingling and issues with my ears, all sorts of things it's all manageable on a day-to-day for the most part. But I feel the changes happening more slowly now with muscle soreness and tension. And on my worst days, I focus on it, and it just makes me very sad and feel very alone. But on my best days, I think to myself, I'm pretty lucky. I've got a wonderful person in my life. I have beautiful friends. And I have something that I love to do, and that's make art, make films, prints, draw, paint. And I'm just going to keep doing those things. What other choice do I have?
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm glad to hear you're going to keep doing those things, because at least through the short film I've been able to see, you do them very well.
Thank you.
What do you think most people who don't have MS get wrong about MS?
Can I tell you the thing that annoys me the most?
You bet.
This happened yesterday, actually. I couldn't believe it. It's happened to me a number of times. When people find out that I have MS, either through seeing my artwork or reading something about me, or if I've told them directly they have this knee-jerk response, and I know I'm not the only person who's experienced this, where they tell me some tragic tale about another person in their life who had MS and it went poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And this man told me about his friend who died from complications of MS. And what am I supposed to do with that information? Exactly, I don't know. And that sort of thing just drives me completely bananas.
Yeah.
I think one of the things people get wrong about MS is that they need to do anything right there in the moment, or that they need to say anything. Just be a regular person and listen, will ya?
Yeah. That's a great insight. And you're absolutely right. I think that people in that moment feel like they're supposed to say something. And unfortunately, they don't know enough about MS to say something that might truly be helpful. Like the good news is it affects everybody differently.
Right.
So yeah, I hear you. Well, let's talk about this short film you made. What motivated you to want to make Noggin?
When I was in the process of getting diagnosed and receiving a diagnosis and beginning treatment, it really felt like there was a fork in the road, and it was make art and continue, or go into a dark hole. And the dark hole was just not an option for me. I could feel what that was like. I've sensed that before, and I know how bad that can be. Depression and anxiety and feeling completely purposeless and listless. And I actively said to myself, no. I knew I didn't have all of my normal faculties intact to be able to make something with much control. So I decided I'd make something in which I had zero control, because that's where I was at. And I have something called a multiplane setup that I've built. And they're fancy multiplanes, and they're kind of homemade multiplanes. Mine's a homemade multiplane. It's an IKEA shelving unit that I've taken out the middle parts, and I've laid planes of glass on there. And my camera is pointing down through all the planes of glass, and it lets me work on the various levels of glass with ink or paint or whatever I'm using. And I can change the focus and focal length of the camera to focus on different levels of the glass and achieve all kinds of different effects. And so I was working purely gesturally and with abstraction and movement by pouring ink and paint and using brushes and other implements and markers. And I was just going. I was like, I'm going from point A to point B right now. Then I'll go from point B to point C. I had no real concepts in mind, just feeling. And that was the genesis of the film, just working in that way for some time until I started to feel better. I had started to heal some. I had achieved a little bit more clarity. And it was many months later that I began to build some paper puppets and work on a good bit more writing and music making, that I saw that those very gestural, emotional elements could live with some more cerebral and thought out storytelling and narrative moments. And I worked on collaging and bringing them all together to try and find some kind of hybrid thing, something new.
You know, I think when I look at the number of film festivals that Noggin has been accepted into, it's pretty clear what the various film festival juries think about your film. What's been the audience reaction?
You know, it's been such a pleasure. It's been really lovely. Many people have approached me and they've just wanted to talk about something that struck them in the film. And it means the absolute world to me, because these people are not coming up and talking to me and saying something like, I feel so bad that you are sick. You're so brave to like keep making art. You know, they're actually impacted by the art making and the quality of the thing, that's what I want to hear, you know? And to be honest with you, it's been a joy, and it's felt very healing and uplifting. I love talking about craft and art making. I love going to see other people's art shows and other people's screenings, and I love when they come to mine. the artistic community is one of the most important things in my life. And so being able to come to festivals like Slam Dance, where I am now, to be surrounded by people who just love to make things and tell stories, and it's a huge part of their identity, I feel quite at home.
I'm not surprised to hear that different members of the audience want to approach you and talk about things other than, oh, you have MS. Because when I watched your film, really, it tells such a universal story. Not that everybody has MS, but everyone at least knows someone, maybe a family member, maybe themselves, or maybe a friend who has gone through something health related where they feel like they're afraid that they're losing a part of themselves. For you, what I saw was that memory issue was a real key aspect of what you had to deal with that worried you a great deal. I won't try to tell the story of your film because I couldn't do it justice, but I loved the building your memory palace segment in particular, because I can think of so many people who don't have MS, but for a variety of other reasons may be struggling with memory issues where they feel, I think what you just said a few minutes ago, not quite as sharp as they once did. And I really think that speaks to so many people.
Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to do was pay some kind of homage to the simple things that are so pleasurable in life. So I reached out to a lot of my friends and I said, just pick kind of a random image or video in your camera roll, something very quotidian, and send it to me. And I'm going to make something with it if you're okay with that. I'm going to make a big collage. And people sent me all sorts of stuff. They sent me videos of them lifting weights or talking to me, giving me some kind of message right into the camera. They sent me videos of their little cousin playing sports, all kinds of things. And it was just such a delight to have all of these pieces of life that were meaningful to people, meaningful to me. And I kind of thought about the memory palace construction as a weaving exercise of bringing all of these things together to let them have structure, foundation, a base, so that it could be strong and unmovable. And hopefully I could make art in that way that I could share with people and with my community, but also something in my brain would learn what that is like, building a solid foundation and a base. And perhaps it would help protect my own memories from this disease too.
Well, I think that using such simple storytelling, you succeed in that respect just magnificently. You really do.
Thank you.
So what's been your reaction to what I'll call this entire experience? Everything from starting where you were focused maybe more on the process of art than what it was going to be when it grew up, to seeing this film being so well received at film festivals. And what's been the effect of all that on you?
It's been kind of unbelievable, to be honest with you. And I still am not quite sure how I feel about the whole thing. I'm very happy. I'm very pleased that I was able to make this thing. But as I was kind of mentioning earlier, from the beginning, my face was so close to the work. My eyes and nose and ears were just on top of the work. I had no perspective whatsoever. I was too stressed to even find perspective. So I just went with that. And now that the film has been finished for some time and I've been able to see it in screening rooms with other people, I have a much more objective view of the process and how it all came together. And maybe the thing I like the best is that I'm not exactly sure how it all came together. There's a lot of instinctual gut decisions that were happening along the way. And there are parts of it that I'd like to change, or parts that I don't think are quite as strong as other bits. But I know inherently that if I touch it and open it back up, I'll never be able to make it quite as strong as it is right now, because it's such a symbol of a distinct moment in my life. And I wanted to make a memory palace for myself, and I actually did it in some ways. And so I kind of marvel at that. And I don't know if I can do it again.
So at the risk of taking you out of the present moment, what's next for you, Case?
Well, I'm writing, I'm playing some music, I'm making drawings. I have a concept for the next film. So I moved to Italy about a year ago. My partner got a job and she said, "Do you want to move to Italy? This could be really amazing and fun for us. Plus, healthcare system is wonderful there." And I said, "Absolutely, you little adventurer, you, why not? Let's go for it. Let's move to Italy." And so we did. And learning the language has been challenging and wonderful. And so the next project has a relationship to Noggin, in that my character, my protagonist, my avatar of myself is doing everything they can to learn the language in hopes that they can build new neural pathways. That if the disease is like destruction coming behind them, maybe if they learn enough vocabulary, words and phrases and modes of communication, they'll be able to keep pushing and building new roads in front of them to stay ahead of the impending thing behind them. And I know in some ways it's folly, but I think the piece is going to be a little tragicomic in that way. That's my aim anyway.
You already have me excited. Looking forward to that. So
thanks.
Well, Case Jernigan, I want to thank you for using your talent to share your MS journey and help people better understand what living with MS could be like. And thanks so much for talking with me today.
John, I really appreciate your time, and thanks very much for your attention and for spending time with the film. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Suni Conway has been living with MS for nearly 13 years. She shares her MS journey through social media, including, I might add, explaining a torturous 7-year ordeal in just getting diagnosed. Suni focuses her MS awareness efforts on self-advocacy and diagnosis and treatment, and she's a strong voice in advocating for healthcare reform. If you'd like to follow Suni on Instagram, you'll find that link in today's show notes, and in a moment, you'll meet Suni Conway. During MS Awareness Week, the National MS Society amplifies the voices of people living with MS. This year, the MS Society is asking everyone in the MS community to raise awareness and stand up to their disease by telling MS exactly what they think of it. Suni Conway has been living with MS for nearly 13 years. She shares her compelling diagnosis journey through social media, and she's created a strong online presence. Suni focuses her MS awareness efforts on self-advocacy and diagnosis and treatment, and she's a strong voice in support of healthcare reform. Welcome to the podcast, Suni.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
So I'm curious, what did you say when the MS Society said you could tell MS exactly what you think of it?
I'll be honest, it was not something that I had ever even thought to do. It was such a different prompt, if you will, right? It's always talk about your MS but never talk to it, right? But I think it was extremely cathartic because after, saying it a few times into a camera with lights on, I was thinking, okay, this is uncomfortable, but why? Why is it uncomfortable for me? And I realized it's because I don't think I had ever talked about my MS and not felt like I had to prove something. And talking to it, it was almost like it already implied that everybody else in the room believed me that it was real. And so that's kind of when the floodgates opened, because acknowledging my MS as almost this presence right before me and speaking directly to it made it feel so real, and it made me feel so validated to be able to do that. And then, of course, I cried. So,
well, I know you raise awareness of MS through your storytelling. How did that all start for you?
I I spent 7 years being told that I wasn't sick. I spent years and years going to doctors, being diagnosed with, what we now know are pretty textbook symptoms: optic neuritis, severe vertigo, limpness, weakness, numbness, tingling, all of these things. And it was just being constantly undermined by the medical professionals that I was begging for help. I kind of gave up on it almost for a little while. And then it took me being in a hotel room by myself with E! News playing in the background while I was on a work trip, hearing Selma Blair speak about her diagnosis in 2018, and finally just having everything click and say, oh my gosh, I have that. That's happened to me. I can relate to that. Oh my gosh, I think I have MS. And that's what led me to be diagnosed. And when I finally was, and I had to basically find a doctor that would believe me that I already had MS to give me a scan that proved it, I thought, this can't happen to other people. People cannot go 7 years being told that they're not sick, that they're being dramatic, or they're maybe just lazy and need to work harder at physical fitness, or all these different things that I had been told over the years. Those things, the anger of feeling so not believed, so worthless and invalidated, that drove me to speak up and to start advocating and to be the change that I wanted to see in the healthcare system that I felt failed me so badly.
So I want to go back to something I think I just heard you say. Are you telling me that you had to trick a doctor in order to get diagnosed?
I did. That was my nice way of paraphrasing the truth, which was that I bold-faced lied to say, I already have an MS diagnosis. I'm just here for my checkup scan, but I couldn't get in to see my regular doctor. Can you please refer me for an MRI? Because at that point, I was so certain, after hearing Selma Blair talk about her symptoms, that I knew that there could be nothing else in the world that it could be other than MS after, researching things. And I am not someone who advocates for people going on WebMD and reading the very least likely scenario and having that be actually correct. But that's what happened to me. And that's how I became diagnosed. I had surgeries that were elective that my primary care physician told me to have. And I'll be very open and honest. I always am. But she told me to have a breast reduction, that my breasts were too big for my body. And that's what was causing my numbness. This was a doctor who was very close to me, and I'd seen her for over 9 years. And that's what she responded with when I told her I couldn't feel my feet and that my fingers and legs were numb and tingling. So yes, I did have to break some rules to become diagnosed, and I'm glad that I did. And I hope no one else has to.
How did it feel after not being believed for 7 years to finally have an answer and get that diagnosis?
I always thought that I would feel right and vindicated and just like I can start my life now. But I will be honest, I'm human, and there was a very long period of anger. I started looking up malpractice lawyers and wanted to blame everybody and hold them accountable for every, out-of-pocket surgery or procedure I had, all of the wrong information that was given to me, the therapy that I needed that broke down my sense of self and caused me to need to go get help, because I was thinking, I'm lazy. I am worthless. Like, everybody else is better at life than me. I'm suffering and it's my fault. And so I was upset, and it took me a bit to get over that, but I finally broke through that when I realized none of them are going to have to live with this. I'm the one who has to live with this. And so I ended up figuring out that I had to find a way to see the better parts of what this could do for me, which is I use it as a motivator. I'm not happy I have MS, but I am thankful for the things that it brought out in me. I've said before in conversations with people that the best thing about MS is me. And I believe that's possible for anybody living with the disease, because it is up to you to bring the most out of it and to make it as positive for yourself as possible, because MS will not do that for you.
Well, I think that your initial response to that diagnosis was very human and very appropriate given everything you had been put through. So given all that, and now you're diagnosed, what was it that inspired you to start sharing your story on social media?
Well, once I felt like I was in a place where I could actually bring a little bit more levity and positivity to the space and not just be one of the people who rants and writes horrendous reviews for all the doctors I had seen in the past. I felt like I felt like there had to be somebody out there like me that wanted to see somebody, in my situation. I was very young when I first started having MS. I was 20 when I was first having my attacks. And so by the time I was diagnosed, I was 27, turning 28. And I just thought, I don't see a lot of other people like me out there sharing their story. I remember calling the MS Friends helpline because I so badly wanted to relate to somebody or talk to somebody who was going through what I was going through. And it was very hard to find somebody in my age group, somebody who, had my sort of lifestyle or just connecting with people in the same phase of their MS that I was. And so because I didn't see a lot of that out there, I created a social media account, an Instagram account. I crossed my fingers that the people that I hung out with in high school would not find me, because it was a little bit embarrassing to start posting all the time. And that was a kind of not at all what I imagined I would do. I'm in the finance industry, and I thought, oh gosh, I hope my clients don't see me running on the treadmill today and posting these, but it was something that I knew I had to do. And I knew that there were not enough people in my situation being visible so that, we could reach other people. And it did create a community. And it actually, that was many years ago now. That was 2018, 2019, I would say I started it. And it's a lot more prevalent now. And I like to think that it is because people like me did start their Instagram accounts and share and create that community and awareness. I see so many more people out there being active with their MS or whatever autoimmune disease they're living with, and inspiring other people to move forward the way that they can. Everybody's unique in the way that they approach it, but a lot of us share the same goals.
I think that raising awareness of MS can be personally empowering. How has sharing your story impacted your life?
It's brought me back to myself. It did take a long time to recover from the level of self-doubt that being told no for, as long as I was, that wreaked havoc on my sense of self. And so finally being able to be at a place where I could share with people, and have people look to me for advice or support, that's given so much back to me. And I'm grateful for that, because the more, love and support you receive, the more you want to reflect that outward. And I think it's just a full circle cycle of, positivity. And I'm thankful that I started sharing, but more so thankful for the fact that all of what I've put out there has been reflected back to me tenfold, whether it's through the programs I've become involved with, or the people that I've met, or the change that, I've been able to have a small part in affecting.
Well, in addition to living your life on social media, there's also the matter of living your everyday life. And I know that tackling the challenges of MS can sometimes take a lot. Tell us, what does your day-to-day with MS look like?
As most people know, with an autoimmune disease, not every day is the same, and you can't show up to every day the same, and that's okay. I found that being regimented really helps me, because even though you can't show up the same to every single day, you can show up in the way that you are, in the capacity that you have, and be able to approach things and get creative. So for me, for example, I wake up every morning and I work out. That's the first thing I can give to myself, to be able to have a good day and to know that I'm going to do my best. And even though the way that I work out definitely needs to change depending on how I feel, what my energy levels are looking like, how much sleep I got the night before, that part's okay. It's just knowing that I have created the space for health and wellness first thing in the morning. And that is something I've given to myself, which I look at as a gift. And then from there, it's being able to spend a little bit of time with my husband before we go to work. We wake up very early. We both work market hours, so our hours are a little bit nuts. We're in the West, we're on the West Coast in California, but we both work East Coast time. So when we wake up, it's like 4 a.m. to work out, and then we have a quick breakfast. We walk our dogs. And so being able to do those little joyous moments in life before all the chaos starts, that's super helpful. And it just puts my mindset in the right place. I know that even if I run out of energy or I get tired and I can't do anything after work because I'm exhausted, it's okay because I've already given to myself and I've already had quality time. So really, it's a matter of symptom management, of course, which I know a lot of people living with MS have to do that all throughout the day, but it's putting myself in the best possible position to do that and giving to myself first so I don't feel resentful that I've had things taken away from me.
Can you share some of the symptoms that you deal with regularly or most frequently?
Absolutely. So I deal with brain fog quite regularly. That's something that, comes in and out. I kind of talk about it as like my morning fog or like the marine layer, my husband likes to call it, because he's from the Midwest and now thinks he's from California because he knows what a marine layer is. We love that. But he's like, oh, has your marine layer cleared yet? And so there's certain times I wake up in the morning and everything's really foggy and hazy, and it takes me longer to be able to connect the dots. I've noticed that it kind of makes me speak in fragmented sentences. And so that's kind of why he's like, oh, let me know when that marine layer clears out. And so brain fog for sure. Especially if I'm tired or I'm off of my routine, that's very prevalent. I have a much weaker left side of my body from my extremities. So my legs, my arm, it's just, I've got constant numbness and tingling, but it's also like it's a second and a half, behind my right side. So I do like to run, and I do tend to run most days, but I'm not able to run the same way that I used to or at the same speed. And it's something that I have to think about every step. I have to make sure I'm giving a little bit more effort and energy to be able to put that foot first in front of the other. Whereas most people can kind of reach a runner's high and go into autopilot. Unfortunately, I don't have that luxury, but I'm just so thankful that I can still run in any capacity. So it's dealing with little things like that, having the numbness and the weakness, having the shocks that kind of they're just like a jolt through my body, or the spasms on my left side. It feels a little bit like a disconnect there. So that's always present. And was a remaining symptom of one of my last relapses that were really severe. So I'm just lucky that I've come to a point where I've learned to live with, the ramifications of, what's been left behind. Other than that, I deal a lot with overstimulation. I'm very sensitive to different lighting or noises, and I get very flustered and disconnected when there's too many things going on around me. So it's constantly having to make sure that I've got, my noise canceling little earplugs where I can still hear people. Cause it is nice to have the ones that block out all the noise, but we still need to be social and be polite. So I try to keep those with me at all times and have little things there that can help me cope and manage the symptoms that I already know are going to be there. And those are the ones I deal with the most on a day-to-day basis.
Well, as we're talking, we're in the midst of MS Awareness Week. What does that mean to you?
It means that it's a week where we get to talk about all the things that we all experience the other 51 weeks of the year, right? And I like to say that MS Awareness, Week is so, so great for getting out there to people. We're highlighting all of these things that we're doing all year round. But this is the week we get to celebrate it and have pride and talk about what new, research is available and what new initiatives are out there collectively as a group. And, I love working with the MS Society because they use MS Awareness Week to launch a campaign, and they always have creative directions that they're going with. Like you mentioned, this year is, Tell MS, right? And so that's something that's so much fun because it creates something exciting and new for all of us to be able to take part in and to advocate and share and spread that spread that message out there, but also group in everything that we've all been working on. And, not everything's going to change every year, but having a new awesome initiative to propel us forward and still bring forth all the other things that this community works on is phenomenal. It's like just being able to share something and get people excited. I wish it were MS awareness every day, but it's a great week, and it's a chance for us all to be able to help others who are not necessarily a part of the community as much as we are know that we're here and to roar loudly. And I love that.
Well, Suni Conway, I want to thank you for all you do to raise awareness about MS and to advocate in support of healthcare reform. Personally, I'm looking forward to meeting up with you in person at the MS Society's Public Policy Conference in Washington, D.C. And thanks so much for talking with me today.
Thank you, John. It's been such a pleasure, and I am so excited to march up those Capitol Hill steps with you.
That's going to wrap up this MS Awareness Week episode of Real Talk MS. Real Talk MS is powered by the National MS Society. And you can share this episode of the podcast by letting your friends or family members know that all they have to do is point their web browser at realtalkms.com/393. You'll find that link in today's show notes, so you can easily copy and paste it right into an email or a text. I'll also remind you to keep an eye and an ear out all week long for bonus episodes of Real Talk MS and bonus video interviews on our YouTube channel, featuring conversations I had with some of the leading MS experts in the world, whom I had a chance to talk with just a couple of weeks ago at the 2025 ACTRIMS Forum. In the meantime, if you have a minute, I hope you'll visit the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store and download the free RealTalk MS app for your iOS or Android smartphone or tablet. It's the best way for us to stay connected. The app will automatically download the latest episode of RealTalk MS. You'll be able to access any of our past episodes. You'll be able to save your favorite episodes. And it's a great way for me to share bonus content with you. The app is free, so I hope you'll download it today. I'm John Strum. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and make healthy choices.